Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, End-to-End Security Operations Management in a SOAR Platform, sponsored by Samplify. My name is Carol Auth of SANS, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speakers are Chris Crowley, Senior SANS Instructor, Christopher Mitchell, Demand Generation Manager at Samplify, and Daniel DeSarens, Senior Security Solutions Architect at Samplify. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to our presenters.
Thank you very much, Carol. Welcome to everybody who's here today, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Samplify platform that I tested, and you can actually read the white paper that this webcast is referring to. Also want to welcome Christopher Mitchell and Daniel DeSarens from Samplify. They're going to actually be talking a little bit after my initial presentation about the platform itself, and basically the topic for today is what SOAR is supposed to be, what a tool is, and then also how I assessed the tool when I tested it for the white paper. And one of the things that I took away from it was that there are kind of two primary roles for the users of the platform, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And I just want to be clear, that's not exactly what Samplify defines for it, but that was the impression that I was left with in terms of trying to advise people about how to use the platform effectively. If you don't have that clarity approaching it, then I think that you might have some missteps and inefficiencies in your deployment of the technology. Then, after I get through talking about it, Christopher and Daniel are going to go into some of the things that they've seen with their customers actually utilizing the tool, and then they'll talk a little bit about the tool itself through a demonstration. So that's the plan for today. Should be pretty straightforward. I have noticed that a lot of people are considering purchasing security operations, security orchestration, automation, and response type tools, the SOAR tools, because the tools have reached a level of maturity that now I think a lot of people are saying, oh, wait a minute, like that won't really help us. So let's get into what this is. And so the background for this is that I did some testing, and I was given the tool via a Docker instance. And so when I do testing, I like to be very clear about how I tested it. I don't want people saying, well, my version doesn't do that. You say it does this. Well, so this is the version that I used. This was provided to me by Samplify. This is a Docker instance, so it was basically immediately available. I downloaded it, put it in Docker. The only problem I had was that I didn't know the password. They had sent it to me in an email, and I somehow overlooked it. And good hacker that I am, I couldn't come up with password or whatever complexity was it. I swear I tried it, but it didn't work. So it was just basically right out of the box, gave me a really good view of what the tool does. It had different accounts, different roles, different sort of analysts that I could log in as, and I'll talk about some of the compartmentalization that you're able to do on a per analyst basis as we go through today. And today I don't have a ton of time in order to get into all the details of this, but you can read the paper where I discuss it in a little bit greater detail. In addition to that, there were a bunch of modules that were enabled. So I didn't have to, discuss the licensing or this module or that module or selection or any of that. I basically had all of the stuff, right? And one of the things that I had was the marketplace. And I'm going to talk about the marketplace because the marketplace is basically the vehicle for delivery of a bunch of integrations and other things that really make you much more effective with this tool immediately, because it's basically their venue for providing things that aren't part of the tool itself, but their configuration specifications. And I'm oversimplifying just a little bit in terms of configuration specifications. Again, I'll talk about what different types of things are there, but for the purpose of the introduction, I just want to say it's basically like, it's not the tool itself, it's pre-populated configuration and direction and use cases, and it's like all of this stuff that you can pretty much click it, and all of a sudden it configures the tool to do what you might want it to do. Okay, so that's how I approach the testing, and this was an easy way for me to get into it, to really be able to spend the time that I had kicking the tires, so to speak, on the tool. So security automation, orchestration, response is what we're talking about. This is an acronym that has actually changed a little bit over its lifespan. This is what it is currently, right? And this is basically applied to a category of tools, right? That's how we usually use this acronym. And so when I look at this, I mean, cybersecurity, we should kind of know what that is, but cybersecurity is like intended use, right? We don't want our information systems doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. Automation is performance of a task without much human interaction. Orchestration is automation across multiple systems, and response in cybersecurity is basically when we act upon something, what ends up occurring with that. And this is something that is really interesting. Our responsive actions, and I really want to highlight this, our responsive actions are essentially IT configuration changes, only in the context of, I'll say duress, right? But it's actually in the context of substantial unknowns. Like pretty much everything that I do in my incident handling, incident response, security response, whatever you want to call it, pretty much everything I do is kind of a normal move, add, change type action, only I'm doing it in response to some unwanted circumstances that are occurring. If containment is done by changing the firewall, well, I can change the firewall normally. Okay, so this is kind of where I'm coming from with this. But the challenge is for us in cybersecurity is we don't know what the right thing is when we start doing stuff, peeking and poking these these things in our complex system, right? And so when we start doing stuff with our interventions, we tend to try things without a lot of certainty. And if you're just kind of guessing, there's the likelihood that you might introduce some errors in doing that. And this is one of the big things that SOAR is supposed to help us to avoid, right? And that's why you want a SOAR tool, is that I want to be able to design my responsive actions from the perspective of, here's all the stuff that's at my disposal of what I can do. But my analysts are usually tasked with comprehending the details of hundreds of different types of systems. And you probably have thousands of actual deployments, but hundreds of different types of systems with nuances for each one. I mean, just think about this. For every single person that you interact with regularly over the course of 1 month, can you recall off of the top of your head that person, where they're from, what their email address is, what their telephone number is, what their favorite drink is, what their favorite thing for lunch is? No, probably not, right? I mean, it's like, and so for an analyst in a security operations center to be able to recall granular, detailed information about every single computer system across a broad, expansive network with customizations for each one is essentially nearly impossible. And so what we're using is this orchestration automation tool to be able to provide that nuanced, granular, detailed guidance for the analyst of like, on this system, definitely do this. On that system, definitely don't do that. On that other system, do a different thing. In this case, you're not allowed to do it. In that case, you're encouraged to consider doing this specific thing, right? And that's just such a massive amount of information that an individual analyst needs to be able to manage and juggle and respond in the circumstances of uncertainty. Okay, so the SOAR tool is not intended to replace your analysts. When I hear this, I always kind of chuckle. It's like, okay, like show me the instance of a SOAR tool where now the analysts just are like feet on the desk thinking, gosh, what do I do now that we've got this tool handling all this stuff, right? This is not yet the Jetsons, right? We don't have things where the tools have just matured to the point where we can just push the button and they're ready to go. Not the case yet. I'm looking forward to the day, right, when we have everything taken care of and all of our needs addressed. It does not eliminate the need for people. What it does is it augments the people who you already have to take away the tedium and to compel them to higher order thought. Right, that's what the tool is intended to do. And it's interesting to me. I mean, I've been working in cybersecurity for about, I'll say 20 years. Like 2002 was about the first deployment that I did of a cybersecurity specific technology. Okay. And this idea of like not needing people is so far-fetched to me that it is almost laughable. But I will say the tools are a hell of a lot better than they were 20 years ago, right? And just the fact that we're at the maturity of being able to specify a tool which is taking care of the stuff that I was writing in Perl when I was working on on IT systems 20 years ago. And Python existed then, but Python wasn't nearly as popular as Perl was. And I was writing automations 20 years ago in order to handle business processes and security processes that needed to happen. So there are a lot of sort of specific terms that Samplify uses that I don't exactly use in exactly the way that they do. So I'm going to try to, in this talk, match the terms to their terminology rather than the terms that I usually use. So they talk about modules and integrations and use cases and playbooks and so on. And so that's when I'm using these terms in this webcast, I'm basically using their version of this technology. And this is a problem for us in cybersecurity to have the exact same nomenclature, because actually my term use case is something that I like the way that I use it. And so that causes a problem for other people too. Okay, so overall, the tool Simplify's version of the SOAR tool has tremendous power. Okay, and this is sort of a blessing and a curse for you. Tremendously powerful. Can you handle it? Right? I mean, it's like, can you actually buy this tool and make the tool do all the stuff that it's capable of doing? Even though they have a lot of scaffolding to help you to quickly build things, I would guess that you would be able to do a lot of stuff right away. Like within the first couple of weeks, if you implemented this, you'd probably be able to be like, hey, look at that, that's awesome. And then you would probably think about it and iterate a couple of times in order to kind of recapture what you did initially into a more effective thing. So hopefully, if there's something that you take away from today, it is a little bit of guidance on how to think critically about the deployment of your SOAR tool, Simplify or whatever it is, before you start doing it. And if you already have started, maybe it gives you a little bit of pause to think, how can I be more effective in my very next step? Because if you have even a slightly off trajectory and you apply a lot of power in that direction, you might be going off course. And so I'm trying to help you to make sure that you course correct before you really hit the throttle. Okay, so I just bought a new motorcycle, so that's I'm thinking a lot about course correction on a very powerful motorcycle. It's the same thing. Like if you put into the corner wrong at the very beginning, you might not be able to get through that corner. So I want to make sure that you actually do this right. So first thing that I saw, and again, this is not the official Simplify guidance. This is my opinion. The first thing that I saw is you kind of need two big categories of roles. One is the analyst role. The other is what I'll call the architect role. This architect role is specifically intended to customize the stuff that's there to your specific needs. If you've done a good job in approaching the procurement process for SOAR, then what you probably did was reflected as an organization and specifically as a security operations capability, whether you run a SOC or call what you do a SOC or not, you've reflected on what you need. What is the intention of spending a bunch of money on this specific tool? And if you go into the procurement process with those specifications, they might have changed during the procurement process. But hopefully, let's just assume you did a pretty good job and you're 75% or 80 or 90% correct in the specifications in terms of what you as a security operations center are capable of now and what this tool is intended to do for you. So let's say you had a really close match to that. You went into the procurement process, you bought a tool. You should already know what the architect is going to need to do, in my opinion. Right? If you approach procurement well, then this role makes sense already. The architect is going to select the things from within the tool, from within Simplify. The architect is going to say, here's all the stuff. Here are the integrations that we need. Here are the playbooks that we're going to deploy. Here are the environments that we're going to need to configure. And here are the specific plays and actions that we're going to put into those different environments. Here are the analysts who are authorized to operate in the given environments. Right? If you actually approach procurement well, then the next step of architecture, of what I'm calling architecture within the specific tool, kind of just falls into place. Okay, because you understand your environment well. If you buy the tool and you haven't really thought that out, then you're going to need to do that introspection of how are we going to use this. Okay. And then there's the analyst role, which is working the active cases. And I'm going to show you what this looks like, right? Because analysis is a big problem for a lot of people inside of security operations, okay? And doing analysis well is a place where most SOCs, in my opinion, really fail to live up to their promise for the organization. And they tend to want to turn themselves into some form of like a help desk thing, where it's just like, well, we have these, 5 things and we just churn them out all day. In my opinion, security operations centers are a little bit more sophisticated than that and should be more sophisticated than that. And you can actually get this architecture to match whatever level of sophistication you really want. But you have to be able to see that bigger picture and make it happen. Part of the bigger picture is the idea of multi-tenancy. Even within a single SOC that has constituents, you might actually be using this multi-tenancy that Simplify provides. And so what you can do is identify environments, and then you're able to actually apply various elements to specific environments. You can create a custom playbook for each of your different environments. So, and I'm just going to give a simple example. Let's say you have, sort of a web front end that is customer facing, right? Let's say you're a financial organization. You have kind of this banking type web front end, or your, financial, environment that has a transactional type thing where you do trades or something like that, whatever. And then you have all of your back-end systems where you have employees working on these systems. You could actually separate your environments there where you could apply different plays and integrations given the system deployments that are actually in place, right? Very powerful concept. And leveraging this fully is something that's really important for you to think about. You could also just start with everything in one big bucket, right? That would simplify things and basically make it to where you could just get going very quickly, but you would have sort of more complication in the long term if you became more granular in your application of different concepts, okay? The playbooks are the sequence of actions, right? Playbooks are basically the thinking process that you want the system to go through. And the system is actually able to incorporate different triggers and actions and decision-making points into the playbooks. And so the playbook, in my opinion, should be thought about as an analyst's direction, right? An analyst helper. But you can also hear trigger actions which are automatic. And you can do things like thresholding, like basically it's like we trigger this action if these other conditions are met, right? Very complicated, very sophisticated. I would want some sort of a forum between my analysts who are being directed by the playbooks and my architect or architects who are configuring the playbooks. I would want to have an ongoing dialogue between those two roles. This might even be in a small shop, the same person, right? But I would want that person to not just be constantly changing the playbooks. I would want them to apply that same sort of separation and rigor, even if it's the same person doing this. Okay, so the playbook really is the logic of the flow of the action inside of that. Okay, the integrations are the connection of multiple different tools from within your environment into the simplified tool. And so there are tons of integrations. And I'm just giving two examples here of cloud-based integrations where you can basically say, if this thing happens, go over here, disable that account within the Azure Active Directory deployment that we have. Okay, so if you have something where you saw something that crosses a threshold of concern, you can automatically disable the account. And this is across all of your different systems that you could do this. And this is just one simple example. And so as a containment action, if part of your containment sequence is disabling accounts, you can just have the system do that. Do you want to do that for everybody? I don't know, right? I don't know how confident you are in the system. I don't know how confident you are in the detections. Do you know that? Probably not to begin with. So this might be something that the analyst needs to do. But then after you accomplish some degree of confidence in the system and in the playbook, which is leading up to this specific instance of a potential containment action, after you've been running this for 3 months, you might be able to say, yeah, that's good. Let's do it. Get that thing to be automated. Okay, and this is basically the approach that I would take to deployment. If I was just given this tool in an environment and said deploy this, I would build my playbooks as though it's all going to be automated, but then I would kind of keep it back a little bit in terms of the power. I would roll off the throttle just a little bit when I was going into that corner and not try that corner the first time at full speed, right? In order to make sure that I'm actually being careful with this so that I protect the integrity of my deployment of my Simplify instance in order to make sure that I get to keep it, right? I don't want to have that thing taken away from me too quickly because I messed something up. In the marketplace, there are a whole bunch of pre-built playbooks. So if you think that you're probably going to do something, it's actually probably in the marketplace already. Really, like all of the standard ones, when I look through, there's a lot of stuff that's there. The integrations or the interaction with other tools. The use cases are flow for the investigation and response. Power-ups are kind of like, you're probably going to want to do this, and we've already basically built it out for you, right? And analytics, everybody loves metrics, especially in this environment. So analytics are basically us being able to develop metrics. And again, this is one of those terms. I call them metrics or service level objectives. The tool calls it analytics. It basically allows you to do intelligence, business intelligence type digestion of data in order to be able to see what's going on, how well are we doing, how are we approaching this. The case wall is where the analyst would spend most of the analyst time. And so this is a listing on the left-hand side of the various cases which are being worked, and then you could drill down into an individual case. And the thing that I really liked about this was that it basically logs all of the actions that the people do as well as the system does in a consolidated environment. And what it'll do is if the tool thinks that something is related, it'll pull it into a given case, right, and be able to see, well, now I'm associating this particular other action through correlation to this, or it can aggregate threat intelligence from your integrated threat intelligence platform and say, I think this is somehow related because this domain name is related to that thing that's in the threat intelligence platform, and I can show this to you. And then the analyst gets that on the case wall, right? And so basically this, what I call correlation, which is either correlation to things that we have in our environment or correlation to threat intelligence, which is outside of our environment. The simplified platform will perform that correlation for you, and it will give you that information. It shows the origin in the view that we see here. And so we have a couple of different origins, which are the source for that correlated information. And the tool is doing this on the back end in order to show the analyst information that's relevant. And this helps us to move away from a very deterministic sort of approach and allows us to do more of a matrix kind of view of information. And so the tool is managing this for us, and that stitching together is something that Simplify saw as a critical element to their tool. And anywhere that a company goes to the length of patenting something, I'm always curious, right? I mean, it's like, it's one of those things where this is essentially where the secret sauce is, that the company is saying, this is what differentiates us. And so the ontology, the ability for the information system, in this case, the Simplify SOAR tool, the ontology is the relationships of information which allow the computer system to understand. Now, this is, most people, anyway, this is what a lot of people would call artificial intelligence, and this is a tough thing. Is where do you want to draw that boundary, right? We are intelligent systems, or so we claim, right? As human beings have a certain modicum of intelligence. One of the things that we're actually really good at, and currently better at computer systems at, is the relationship of information. We're really good at mapping relationships. We're really good at synthesizing information. And this ontology is that synthesis, right? This is what's happening here within the system. And this is not, again, intended to replace the people. It's intended to help the people to draw those connections between potentially disparate pieces of information. We can specify exact correlations, but the system might also have correlations which you might not exactly understand how it came to that conclusion. Okay, and so this is really powerful. It's not just the here stitch these elements together. It's the we understand how we stitch the elements together on the back end, and the tool is doing that to help the analysts to be more performant. Okay, and so you can take these playbooks that are in the marketplace, grab them, and then subsequently vary them for your intended purposes. The more that you customize this tool, the more power you can garner in terms of your security operations. But there's a ton of stuff that's there to begin with. So taking other people's wheels, so to speak, and seeing how they work on your vehicle is a good starting point. And then after you've done this, you might get to the point where you say, I really want to tweak this thing. I want to adjust this. I want to make changes. And there's this mindset of architect and analyst. And all your analysts are going to have little architectural insights, but you want to make sure that you have that feedback mechanism to the person or people who are responsible for actually rendering those customizations. So that's all I've got for now, and I went a little bit over, so I'm just going to quickly, lateral to Christopher. So it's the Christopher and Christopher show here. So Christopher Mitchell, if you would jump in here and go on with your section of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. And quickly, thank you everyone for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate it. As mentioned, my name is Christopher Mitchell, and I'm a demand gen manager here at Simplify, and I'm joined by my colleague, Daniel DeSarens, who's a senior security solutions architect. So Daniel is actually going to dive into the platform and demonstrate everything that Chris just mentioned so far during the presentation. But quickly, I wanted to first provide just a little more background on Simplify. So as a company, we are rooted in security operations, or as we like to say, we were born in the SOC. Our company was founded by security operations experts who worked in a government SOC and then moved on to train dozens and dozens of both military and civilian SOCs from around the world. They founded the company and developed Simplify based on their experiences and everything that security operations teams need to succeed. We are in fact the leading independent security operations platform, and we're trusted by the biggest and best enterprises and MSSPs from around the world. Many of the Fortune 500 companies and Gartner Magic Quadrant MSSPs trust Simplify as the platform to run their security operations day in and day out. And this is clearly reflected in our Gartner Peer Insights reviews, where we're the #1 rated SOAR platform. And lastly, we pride ourselves at Simplify on our commitment to the success of our customers, and that includes having a global presence with expert support teams around the world. So there are a lot of SOAR solutions out there, some that were born out of orchestration, some out of automation, and there is also just a lot that sets us at Simplify apart, as Chris mentioned. But in addition to specific features like embedded threat intel or our crisis management module, we sort of have 3 primary pillars. The first of which is, while SOAR is at the heart of what we do, we also offer a much broader solution that really serves as the central workbench for security operations from an entry-level analyst to a SOC manager and beyond. And as Chris mentioned, we have a patented threat-centric approach that groups alerts from across your detection tools into a single threat-centric case. This is a powerful paradigm shift that ensures your analysts are spending their time on threats versus chasing alerts, which ultimately provides huge efficiency gains. And finally, as Chris mentioned, we are a very powerful tool, but we also like to say that we're powerfully simple. So yes, there is a lot of flexibility for engineers and architects, but our simple and intuitive platform also allows analysts to be productive and ramp up quickly, enabling them to consistently make rapid and educated decisions. So as mentioned, we are the #1 rated SOAR platform on Gartner Peer Insights, and we wanted to just quickly highlight 2 of our favorite quotes, the first of which being, finally, a SOAR platform that actually does what it says from a SOC manager in the financial industry, and the second being a SOAR platform that is intuitive and flexible with great customer service from a CISO in the manufacturing industry. So that's just a taste of sort of the customer success that we found, and I'm actually going to specifically dive into 2 stories from our customers on the next few slides, but it definitely reiterates the core principles here at Simplify and our commitment to our customers. So the first customer success story we're going to be highlighting today includes FedEx. The FedEx SOC manager actually told us that it was clear from the start that Simplify was built for security operations and that the ROI was unequivocal and the juice was more than worth the squeeze. So our patented threat-centric approach, specifically for FedEx, wound up averaging an average of 2.4 alerts per case, which means that for every 100 alerts that come in, only 40 threat-centric cases need to be investigated, which that alone is a 60% reduction in caseload. And as you can imagine, FedEx has a very broad technology stack. They integrate over 40 products into Simplify, including SIM, EDR, TIP, and they actually even integrate the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which helps them understand and report on the actual attack vectors threatening them and identify any gaps in their security posture. FedEx relies heavily on Simplify for reporting as well, which includes both operational reporting, such as the reduction in mean time to detection or the mean time to response, as well as executive level dashboards that show risk reduction and ROI. And finally, in addition to being a huge time saver for FedEx's internal SOC team, Simplify also allows them to use us as a basis for collaboration. So not only do they communicate internally through our platform, but they're also able to use our platform to communicate in real time with their MSSP as well as other stakeholders outside of the SOC. Now, before Daniel jumps into the demo, we'll just take one more look at another quick demonstration from one of the largest banks in Europe. This is an example of a very successful project that went from literally nothing to extremely mature and well-oiled SOAR in less than 12 months. The bank has over 80 playbooks running, and as you can imagine, our playbook lifecycle management capabilities played a big factor in their ability to manage that many workflows and processes. These playbooks are highly automated with almost 90% of actions running automatically. Not only that, but almost every single alert, so 99 out of 100, has a playbook associated with it. So this bank is at a stage where they've mapped out nearly every scenario to a repeatable process in the form of a playbook. And these efforts translate to a huge reduction in case closing time by over 50%, which is truly a game changer for them. So in summary, we are SOC experts trusted by the best, delivering a powerfully simple threat-centric platform that is vendor agnostic and committed to your success. So without further ado, I will hand things over to Daniel to walk us through the platform.
Thanks a lot, Chris. So let me just get my screen here situated so I can walk through the demo here. So just to start with, like Chris was saying, Simplify is set up to ingest information from a lot of different alerting sources. And so those sources could be a variety of different things. They could be a SIM, they could be an EDR solution, it could come from an email. But the alerting data is what we're ingesting into Simplify, and then we're going to go ahead and process that data and turn it into an alert inside the tool. So as we pull that data in and create the alert and Simplify, we're going to go ahead and parse out what we'd call an indicator within those alerts. And those are going to be things like your hashes, your URLs, IP addresses, host names, those types of things. We're going to go ahead and parse those out and put them into what we're going to call our entities. And so as we ingest that, we put it into that alert. We then are going to take that alert and put it into a case. But before we do that, we're going to use that ontology, and we're going to actually look for the relationships within Simplify already in those alerts, and we're going to pull them together into one single case. And that's really what you're seeing here, where we're having multiple alerts come in. We're pulling them together based off of that relationship and the ontology that we have, and then we're putting it into a case that then the analyst could come and start to do their investigation. And one of the things, like we were talking about the multi-tenancy earlier about as well, is that as Simplify is ingesting this information, we can dynamically decide, or you can statically assign these alerts that are being ingested to a specific environment, whether that's a customer or a tenant or whatever you want to call that. And we can put it into its own customer, and based off of the permissions that are within that you want to supply the analyst, you can give them the ability to see 1, 2, all environments that are in the solution, so that they can come in here and actually work those cases. And so as an analyst kind of jumps into the case and through the case queue that's over here on the left-hand side, you can filter this and sort it however you'd like. But as they jump into here, one of the things that Simplify wanted to ensure is that we're presenting the analyst with as much information as possible so that they could make those decisions, understanding what's actually involved in this incident. Kind of like what was talked about earlier, we're augmenting the ability of the analyst to pull all that data in, grab it from maybe Active Directory and go out and get some user information, go out from a threat intelligence source and pull all that data in as well, going out to your endpoints and grabbing some endpoint information too, but gathering all that information so that we can present it to the analyst so that when they come into this case, they can see information about what's happening as far as the alerts are concerned. They can see when all of these alerts happened and really the indicators that are involved in these alerts. But on top of that, they can also start to see some insight into some of the data that's already been gathered. Like I said earlier, the Active Directory information might present us with information just about whether or not this is an administrator or not. So what kind of permissions do they have? What's the user's manager if I needed to go out and communicate with the manager for any purposes? Along with the endpoint information, I can start to look at maybe virus definitions if I'm looking at an AV solution. I could even go out and do some searching to see if there's any other alerts that are associated with this specific machine. But I can start to gather data that's going to assist the analyst in helping them really get to the answer faster. And that encompasses threat intelligence as well. Because as we dive into our playbooks and start to understand what is involved in this and that process that's taking place. The playbook can just help instruct, like Chris was saying earlier, can help instruct the analyst on what to do next. You may not want to kind of just take off all the training wheels and go put everything automated right away, because that might you might want to just double check that what you're doing is good. And that's where we might turn some of these actions to manual action, to where an analyst has to sit in the driver's seat, if you will, and actually click the button to execute the action. But what we still can do is we can do a lot of that data gathering up front here, to where I'm going to go out and say, you know what, go out and get that data for me. I don't want to have to go to my threat intelligence, or I don't want to have to go to my EDR solution just to look up the endpoint, or go to Active Directory just to get the user information. Well, let's let Simplify do that for me. And so we can have Simplify go and grab all that information up front here, or we like to call that kind of our enrichment phase. And then in essence, go into this decision-making process to where we say, well, you know what, is the threat intel that was gathered, is there anything that was suspicious that I found from any of these different sources, whether that's 1, 2, 10, how many ever sources you want to go to, was anything found to be suspicious? Or maybe I want to look at some of those definitions and look at some of the data that was collected, and just say, I mean, some of the decisions that you actively make today, I mean, some of the decisions that you make that binary decision, is this yes or no? Simplify can do that for you. And one of the things that's going to do is it's going to help reduce the number of alerts that you may have been seeing, because I can say, if it's not suspicious, if I have an email that came in and I looked at all the hashes, I looked at all the URLs, I maybe even did a spell check on it really quick just to see if there's anything that's kind of weird about this email, maybe even looking at the recipient, looked at some stuff within the header. If I did all those checks and nothing came back to be suspicious, maybe I can just close that out automatically and kind of remove that from our view, so that I can focus on the threats that really require my attention, in essence, as an analyst. And so that's what you can do with this decision statement. Say, did any of this information come back to be malicious? And if not, let's close it out. But if it did, that's when we can then come into this next phase here, where I'm going to say, okay, let's maybe go out and gather some information. Maybe that requires running a search in my SIM, or going out to my EDR and gathering some additional information. Whatever that might be, as far as maybe additional data gathering, I can run there. But at the end of the day, I want to get to the point where I'm saying, okay, now that I have all this information, and if I didn't take the response action automatically, I mean, what do I want my analyst to do next? And this is as we're talking and thinking through these processes, like we were just discussing earlier, as the architect might be building this out and saying, this is how I would take these specific actions, this is when I would take this action. But I also can then instruct the analyst saying, hey, what do you want to do? What do you think needs to happen? Let's use the relationship mind that we have to kind of stitch that stuff together, stitch the information that we're collecting together, and ask the analyst saying, hey, based off of what you've seen, what do you think needs to happen? And maybe that is, in this case, would you like to remediate it? But we could ask questions like, do you think we should block the IP? Do we need to quarantine the endpoint? Should I delete the email? Should I look in other email boxes for the same email? Those types of actions can take place within this playbook just by asking the analyst a question and letting them answer it, and then automatically having it still go out and perform the action, to where the analyst doesn't have to touch the tool per se, but they're making the decision to go out and perform the action. And so they're still staying within Simplify, giving them that single interaction point, if you will, where they can make a decision, but yet it's going to interface, and you're allowing Simplify to orchestrate all these different actions to happen, and kind of pulling all these tools together into one single solution, and allowing it to really do what it was designed to do, which is do that orchestration. And so that's where you can kind of come in here and start to utilize Simplify to perform those actions. One of the other things I think that's really kind of key here, like Chris was talking about when he was giving his presentation about what Simplify can do and stuff that you can see, is really that as I take these actions, as I go out and perform, whether it's an automated action within the playbook, even if it's a manual action within the playbook, or whether I'm running a manual action even within the case, everything that's being done is being documented and within our case wall. And this is where I can come in here and say, you know, I see that somebody was assigned to it. I see that there was some results that were given. Maybe I want to drill down into that, or maybe the case has already been closed out, and I need to go back into this case and really review what was the reason we made the decision we made. Why did we close out that incident as a not malicious when we're finding out later that maybe that was actually malicious? And so we can come back in here and say, okay, well, based off of what we saw, you know what, nothing really looked bad at that specific time. I can look at the results that came back from virus total at that time or whatever threat intel source I see. I can see any comments that were made that were done by the analysts within this case wall. I can even create a report if I wanted to of all the data that I have here. But I can look at all this data in a point in time when all the decisions were being made and start to understand the process that was taken by the analysts when they reviewed this case. And it can just give you insight after the fact as to what was actually going on within this case. And you can certainly favorite things so that I can maybe more easily find specific pieces of information that might be useful. But it becomes a very powerful tool showing you really what is that chain of custody. How did this case go from case creation to the point of actually closing it as malicious or closing it as not malicious? And how did that happen? What was that process the analyst took to perform that? And so certainly able to do quite a bit within the case here. And so as we kind of drill into that a little bit more deeply, kind of keep those things in mind. We're going to drill into some of these pieces just so that you can kind of get a good feel for some of the stuff we talked about, where that marketplace and even the playbooks. So let me open up our marketplace and then we'll go into playbooks really quick. But when we open up the marketplace here, this is really where you can go to get information that Simplify is producing in essence. So these are the use cases, they're the integrations, the power-ups, even the analytics. This is the information. I like to look at this more like our library of data, a library of information. And it's because when you come in here, you have access to use cases that really cover phishing and malware detected and cloud remediation and just anything that you can kind of think of. We tried to build out a use case that really comes with a series of information. You might ask the question, do we have any templated playbooks? And the answer to that question really is yes. They're called use cases in Simplify. And so when you come into Simplify, you're going to get that playbook that you might be looking for. But along with playbooks, it isn't just we give you the playbook and then we require you to go and kind of figure out what integrations were used in it and then go and configure them and then maybe even create a test case that you can go and kind of see it working live in action. We wanted to actually package that all together for you so that you could kind of get off the ground running quickly. And so we take you through the process when I'm deploying a use case. We're going to take you through that process of not only installing this information, the playbooks, the integrations, even a test case, and if there's a connector that was used, you can install that connector as well. But we're going to take you through the configuration and even the running of that use case, all within this use case screen and this use case widget. It gives you the easy button in essence to push when it says, you know what, I want to deploy a use case for phishing. We got a use case for that. You just go through, you click next, it installs. It's going to take you to the configuration of actually configuring those integrations so that they'll work. And even to the point when you get to the end, you can hit run on that use case and it will generate that test case for you so that you can see and walk through the process that was taken within this use case. But let's say, you know what, I have that use case and those integrations are cool, but you know what, I don't have those integrations, or I don't have all of them, maybe I have a few of them. And that's really where the customization of the tool can come into play, where I can come in here and say, okay, you know what, I want to actually go and download a different integration. Maybe URL scan isn't something I use. Maybe I use something else. Well, that's where we have hundreds of integrations here for you to kind of look through and download whatever ones you are using, whatever tool that you might have. Maybe you have Anomaly, maybe you have some other tools like those that are available within your organization. You can go and just download those, configure them within the solution, grab some of the power-ups like Chris was talking about earlier that might be helpful for you to kind of build out and use kind of manipulate the data, if you will, as we work through these playbooks. And then you can go over into this playbook section and start to utilize the information that you just gathered or you just installed. That's where I can come in here, I can click on my playbook, and I can start to build out and customize it to really meet the needs of my organization. And maybe that's not this automated triage block, maybe that's something else. I can X that out, you know what, I can say, okay, you know what, I want to use maybe this Azure AD, I want to grab that enrich user, and I'm just going to put that right in place into my playbook. I just drag and drop that in place, And that's going to utilize, I mean, it's going to then put that right there in place. This is where you can start to customize these playbooks to really meet your needs, to give you, in essence, the powerful playbook that you're looking for, and that automation that says, this is more tweaked, in essence, to my organization. This is how we would do it, and this is how the process that we would take. I can start to customize my conditional statements, the actions I'm taking. I can create my own blocks, which are, in essence, sub-playbooks, or playbooks that include a series of actions. I can do all of this within our playbook designer, and then even kind of come in here and say, I really want to test this before I put this into production here. Well, I can click on that simulate button here and watch that playbook run on maybe a test case that I have, or a way that I can run that, watch that playbook run and kind of manipulate the data and how I want it to actually work, and see it run in a simulated fashion, all while kind of saving versions of it if I need to, grabbing an image of it if I need to put it into a process, kind of whatever I need to do there as far as the playbook is concerned. I can start to build that out within our playbook designer. And we make that very easy and flexible to use. And so as you're using the tool, we wanted to make sure it was flexible, powerfully simple, like Christopher was saying earlier. And so not only did we give you this ability to very easily customize these playbooks, we wanted to make sure we also gave you the power to actually go and start to customize, maybe building out your own integrations, maybe building out your own action if you want. You can come into our IDE and actually write your own stuff. And it's all here for you to kind of work through, pick an action. You can look at what's here already from the Simplify side, and I can come in here and actually create my own just right here within the tool, that then can be used immediately within our playbook designer here. All of this while we're also then providing those metrics that are going to drive kind of just understanding about what's going on within the stock, as far as what are those top alerting products, what's the alerts that are coming in. And again, with that multi-tenancy piece, I can even drill into each of these environments and see data specifically for those environments. And not only within our dashboards, but like Chris was talking about earlier, I can even build custom playbooks for those. I can, if we were to get into Command Center, we can even add in some actual incidents within that. The multi-tenancy piece goes throughout the entire product, from dashboards to cases to playbooks, even into our reporting as well. And so with that, I'm going to take a quick pause here. Chris, I think we may want to, I don't know if I'm going over a little bit here, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time here for questions, and I'm looking at the time here, and I know that we're getting close. So I could talk a little bit more, but let me pause and go from there. Do you guys have any questions? Or maybe I'll pass it back over to you.
Carol, I do see a couple of questions, but I think you could probably, go longer if you'd like.
Yeah, let me go a little longer then. I'll cover a few more things. I wanted to jump into reporting if we have some time here. So with dashboards and metrics, just being able to show one of the key pieces of data, just giving you the insight into the number of cases, as well as that mean time to triage or mean time to response. And also when we get into our reporting, our advanced reporting, this is where we can start to utilize the power of Tableau, which is something that we've OEM'd into our products, so that you can take anything that you're seeing within those cases, anything that you're seeing within the playbooks and that we're gathering data on, and we can turn that into a powerful interactive report that you can then come in here, click on a report, open that up, have it load, and then start to interact with it, all while utilizing the power of Tableau. And so you can come in here and say, okay, I really want to drill down into some of those alert types. Maybe failed login is one that I'm interested in, and I'm looking at SLAs and saying, wow, man, we have a lot of failed login alerts that don't have any SLA, or maybe they're past SLA. I can click on that and drill into that information, and then scroll down through here and start to see those trends over time. Are we actually doing better than what we were doing before? And I could look at whether it's handling time, or how long is it taking us to respond to this, or really whatever metric I want to drive from the data that Simplify is collecting, from even products. If I have a specific set of products that I'm looking at, which ones are creating more alerts than the other ones? Are we handling those fast? I mean, you can start to drill into that data and really start to understand exactly what is it that's going on. How are we seeing that trend go downward, or is it kind of going up? Or what is that? Where are we seeing that data kind of working for us to show us how our stock is doing really from that perspective. And so that's where we get into kind of some of that reporting. The other piece here is that as I create a case, there's sometimes where we want to take it out of the, in essence, out of the area of the analyst and then the tools and all that area, and say, I really want to add, I really want to transfer this into what we would call our command center. But this is where we'd say, I want to pull this out of the weeds a little bit and move it into more of a people, a task, a type of case where I'm managing the people rather than necessarily the tools. And I can say within this case, I say, this contains some pretty important people that have been maybe been attacked from a phishing email perspective. I need to open this up in Command Center. I can transfer this into our Command Center module, move it into here, and this is where I can start to present information about what's happening, what are we doing to kind of remediate this. But that's also where I can start to manage my collaborators and say, if I needed to invite somebody in that's not necessarily a part of the SOC, then maybe it's HR, maybe it's somebody from legal, maybe it's some other people outside of the SOC, or maybe it's even external to your company. I need to invite them into this so that we can start to manage this incident and take care of it. I can do that within Command Center. And I can come into this workstation area and then start to manage those tasks, presenting each individual maybe with a task, doing those status assessments, understanding where we are at kind of in the handling of this case, all while doing assessments, assigning tasks to just different individuals, allowing them to come in here and complete them, but also adding up that evidence into the Simplify system, into the command center module here within this incident, and say, instead of having to go to Slack or email or the various different solutions that are out there that we're using to kind of communicate information back and forth, you can say, well, let's just use Command Center, put that data up in here, and it's all in one spot. I'm going to one spot to get my updates on as to where we're at within this case. I'm going to one spot to actually add my evidence up into the Simplify instance here. I can also communicate within the solution as well in real time just about what's going on. And then at the end of everything, once it's all said and done, I can say, okay, you know what, now I need that report. And instead of going to all those tools and gathering that information, I just click on this incident report button, and then it will produce that report for me so that I can then have it all done here within the Simplify system, making it very easy to find that data and easy to really work with the solution and get that information back up to the person that needs it, really. And so with that, I will then stop, and we'll have some room for questions.
All right, thanks for that great presentation. We have a couple of questions, so I'll jump in and get started. The first one asks, what is the limitation of SOAR in general, and what would be nice to have?
I'm going to take that, and then I'll let you guys mention it. So for me, SOAR, the limitations tend to be the technology's capability to implement the integrations, or again, this is what Simplify calls it, the integrations to the various systems that are in place, right? So if you have some sort of an XDR system that you just deployed, you would need to make sure that that gets sort of pulled into your SOAR system and then leveraged to its fullest extent. And part of what the SOAR is supposed to be doing, and I use the term, it's the glue between all of your different systems. Like, we have a problem in cybersecurity of data portability. The SOAR systems have been defined specifically to provide that connection and connectivity. So my opinion, the limitation would really be if there isn't a good, well-defined integration which exists, and you're not willing, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the capability to be able to define that yourself, because the Simplify tool is basically there to allow you to do that extension if you want to. If you've built your own custom tool already to do something in your custom environment, so long as you can actually manage the API from Simplify to that, you should be able to do all the things that you want to do. And then the last limitation is your comprehension of the appropriate actions to perform inside of your environment. Because as I mentioned, almost first thing, basically everything we do in cybersecurity is just a standard IT move, add, change, only we're doing it in response to something that we don't want happening. And we have uncertainty around that. So if there's any action that you want to take from a containment, eradication, responsive type perspective, you can do it so long as you can have the other systems do it. Because the SOAR tool, Simplify, brings the interactions to bear, but it doesn't bring the actions. The actions are all performed on a different system, but this is the brain causing the actions to occur. Okay, so the limitations are the integrations and your imagination and ability to execute, is my opinion on that on that answer. So you guys want to take that, and that's probably going to be all we have time for.
I'll chime in, maybe not necessarily from the perspective of limitations, but the perspective of things to consider. And I think one of the most common questions we get, and something that's important to consider, is how easy to deploy SOAR is, or lack thereof. And the truth is, SOAR platforms are not just plug and play. Defining and building and rolling out playbooks certainly takes time and effort. But that being said, we find that the best SOAR platforms will make this process as easy as possible and simple as possible, with something like the use cases and templates and sort of out-of-the-box integrations that we offer in our marketplace, as Chris and Daniel mentioned and demonstrated. So that way you can get up and running quickly with the most common SOAR scenarios, and then from there you can customize and build out additional playbooks and use cases and integrations based on your specific like organization.
All right, thanks. Let's squeeze this last one in. It says, for multi-tenant part, is it capable for MSSP environment?
Yes, it is. I mean, Simplify definitely is capable of doing a multi-tenant environments for an MSSP where we can handle multiple customers. And we have lots of customers doing that today.
All right, well, with that, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Chris, Christopher, and Daniel, for your great presentation, and to Simplify for sponsoring this webcast, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.
Thank you.